Hey there, everybody. Welcome back with the Purplatypus is the name, and welcome back to another Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth video. Today, we're going to be going over two skills from every job that I think are worth, or the best, basically. What makes the job good? What are the best two skills of it? Really quick before we jump in, though, I'm going to keep this pretty brief because it's not what the point of this video is, but I just want to address it since I got enough comments on the video I uploaded today. I mean, yesterday from your perspective, that like, oh, I have this double standard because I'm doing the New Game Plus DLC and I bought that, but I refuse to rank the linebacker and the tennis ace jobs. And I just want to quickly say that, like, I wasn't trying to, and I'm still not trying to make some sort of moral argument or stand where I'm like, this is shitty day one scummy DLC. You shouldn't buy it. And if you do buy it, you're not speaking with your wallet. You're just giving them. I'm not throwing shade at any of that stuff. Like most people pointed out, the New Game Plus is probably a bigger issue of, like, in terms of scumminess, right? I consider both DLC scummy, and I'm buying the New Game Plus. It's more like the reason I didn't rank it is because this video, I want it to be applicable going forward. And as people buy this game and, play it for the first time, those jobs aren't going to be in their version of the game. And if I do rank them and they are really high because they're really good, it might inadvertently encourage people that would otherwise not buy the DLC to then buy the DLC. And I didn't really want to encourage that because it wasn't really like something that I thought was I didn't even think about it that much. It's a pre-order bonus. And I don't typically engage with pre-order bonus content. There's a lot of RPGs, like they give you weapons when you start in a pre-order bonus, or they give you all these boosters that I got in this game. And I just don't really engage with that stuff. It's just a personal decision. It's not like a moral, like, oh, I'm better than anyone for doing it. But anyway, I've rambled on too long. But I think if you go back and you watch it, you'll see that I wasn't, at least my perspective was that I wasn't trying to shame anyone into doing it, and I'm not trying to hold this double standard that I'm better because I'm not ranking those jobs. I think that the DLC is scummy, but at the end of the day, I think you should buy what you want. That's why I bought the New Game Plus, because I wanted it. And that's kind of that. So we're going to just move on past that. Apologize if you were upset that I didn't rank those jobs. I wasn't even really thinking about it. I just decided not to use them, and in the video they were already in the tier list, and so I just put them in the D category for didn't use or do not buy or whatever joke you wanted to go with. Anyway, without further ado, we're going to jump into it, starting with the freelancer. So the freelancer's best jobs. This is one that I actually found to be a hard, but not for the good reasons. Sometimes it's hard because there's so many good skills. I feel like the freelancer is probably the worst job in the game. But that being said, I want to go to skill inheritance because you can actually see exactly kind of the more detailed breakout. I do think the atomic drop is pretty good here. It's extreme damage. It's a grapple with a high chance of critical. So this just does a lot of good damage. Grapples are good to have. Kasuga already has some built in that are like personal, but I think that this one just, with a high chance to crit, it's a pretty good ability. It doesn't do your weapon attributes, which kind of sucks. I'm not a big fan of instant KO. Sorry. The other one here that I had was, sorry, it was this one. It's Headbutt Barrage. I kind of forgot the name of them because I don't use them that much. Kasuga knows what it means to use his noggin. Damages an enemy. It's another grapple. I mean, all of his stuff's pretty much a grapple. But it has a chance to stun. Heavy damage, it's a stun. I don't think most of these abilities are good. I think Atomic Drop is clearly the best, but I think Headbutt Barrage, having a chance to stun, that's definitely not too bad. Next up is the Hero. Now, Hero is just a pretty good class all the way around. This one's hard to pick in the sense that all the abilities are pretty good. Even like things like Hero's Wisdom and Hero's Flair are good. They're not great though, in my opinion. But the two that I think are going to be the best are Hero's Guts. Automatically revives Kasuga once if KO'd. The harder the difficulty, the later in the game, you get where things start doing crazy damage. Being able to spend a turn and just make it so you instantly get KO'd so you don't instantly lose is really good, especially when you have this on the Sujimancer, where if someone wipes out your whole team, Kasuga stands back up, he could revive your whole team, you're good to go again, but then you want to cast this again. So Hero's Guts, super good. It's safe, not exciting, but it is very powerful. And besides that, Hero's Blessing. I wouldn't normally put a revive as one of the best, especially when there's a few classes that have revives. However, this is a revive that the recovery, it's pretty cheap, and the recovery gets better the higher your charisma gets. So whereas like the Idol has one that revives you at 50% HP, This one will revive you at, or it's the Geodancer's at 50% HP. This one will revive you with even more than that as you get your charisma up. So another really good ability in general. Now the Sujimancer is a little bit different because I mean it's another Kasuga specific one, but you can't move these abilities around, which is kind of lame. You know, I don't love that, but still there are some really, really good abilities. Maybe the best ability in the game, even though you almost never use it, but if you ever do, it's the best ability in the game. Call upon your best friends to revive any and all fallen allies with half their HP. So it's only a half revive, not a full, but it is AoE. It can pick up multiple people, so you don't need to spend multiple actions to revive people. So this ability is absolutely insane. The thing is, you have to be a Sujimancer to use it, and I do think the Sujimancer is good still. But yeah, it's not the absolute best. Other than that, like these abilities are also kind of cookie cutter. You know, like, so I couldn't say spicy breath is the breath because spicy, frosty, and zesty would all be identical essentially. But I do think actually the second to best ability is the other ultimate, the Essence of Sujimon Supremacy. It's just like an insanely good AoE attack. It's like the same power as the Dondoko beam, but it's 20 MP less. But overall, it's just like a really powerful ability. I mean, honestly, the Sujimancer is just a little bit weird because of this. Like, these are all the abilities are kind of cookie cutter and the same. But I do think their ultimates are two awesome abilities that I actually do recommend. The Sujimancer might be my favorite job in the game, honestly. It's just kind of fun, though, also. I just like it because of the flavor. Next up is the Homeless Guy, and I actually think the Homeless Guy kind of just does one thing really well. It doesn't do great single target damage, I think, in any way, but this is a AoE powerhouse, especially with its ultimate weapon. And so I think Essence of Big Ass Bird is probably the best skill on the Homeless Guy in general, but it is a little expensive. You may not use it that much. You may end up using just Pigeon Storm quite a bit. But really, what this job does is pretty much that. They pretty much do their big AoE attacks. And even though they apply your weapons attributes, which is very, very good most of the time, as long as you have a weapon that has attributes, and especially when you get your ultimate, you know, it's doing fire damage, it's increasing your base magic. These are both very good abilities, just some of the best AoE stuff in the game. And also they're one of the most fun abilities to use because it's a homeless guy throwing pigeons at people. For Detective, this is actually one that has the same ability as Kasuga's Heroes, but I actually don't think this one is one of the best. For the main reason that is if your protagonist is Kasuga and he goes down, you get a game over, right? Where for Adachi, that's not the case. So you don't really need to use a turn. Using a turn here doesn't prevent you from losing the game. Whereas it can in the other case. This one, you could just revive him after he dies. It's not that good. So why am I talking about ability that's not that good? I just wanted to address that because it's the same ability, but I think it's worse because it's not on the protagonist. I actually think Essence of Cut and Run is like really cool, man. It's a big AoE fire magic stun attack. So the issue with this is that obviously Detective is not a magic user, but if you move this over, if you have Adachi being a host, having an AoE stun could be pretty freaking sick. I actually really like this ability, and I do like cool out-of-place ultimates on certain jobs that you like wouldn't normally use it on, because then you can move it over to a different job, but you can only move one. So having this cool, unique thing, I think is actually pretty cool. And then honestly, just like the other abilities, as far as support goes, like it's okay, but I don't typically like debuffs in general. They have to be really good or attached to damage. Arrest is okay. But I mean, I think actually it just is best damage and ability here that isn't super, super expensive. Right? This one it ignores guard, it never misses, and you could do extra hits if you do the action prompt. So these are probably the two best for the Detective. For the Kiryu exclusive Dragon of Dojima, I mean, this class is so good. Like, really, the auto attacks might be the best skill in this class in some essence. Like, once you get fully awakened, you can do some serious damage. But I really like Essence of the Kamaki Master. Now, the issue with this one is it's expensive. It's 50, man. That's really expensive. It's more expensive than the super ability. But this just does a lot of damage. It does big AoE, does damage. It guarantees a critical hit for the most part. And then it can cause rage. I think rage is pretty good. Now, especially if Kiryu is not your protagonist, rage is a little bit better. If he is your protagonist, it could be a little scary, but I still think it's really good. And then other than that, just Essence of the Dragon God is just so much damage. It's a cool ass ability. It does some fire on it just because, you know, dragon, extreme damage, very good ability. A really quick honorable mention. I like the Kali sticks as well. I just like lowering defense and critically hit. Like, this is damage that can critically hit. It can hit multiple enemies or one enemy 3 times, and it can lower their defense. It's just kind of like good damage. It's cheap. You get easy to spam it, and then sometimes you're going to be buffing your whole team's attack basically by lowering the defense of a boss. Now, talk about a tough one here. Cabbie is a badass class. I love the Cabbie. Probably my favorite base job in the game. That's like a default one. Just lots of really cool stuff. However, there's a few abilities in here that I don't like at all. But the ones that I like the most are definitely going to be Scrub Down, right? This is a medium grapple. It says medium damage. I always get a lot of damage out of this, but that might just because my Eric is always, or my Tamizawa is always kind of leveled with good gear. But lowers resistance to electricity. So if they're weak to ice, you could use this for damage, and then your other characters with maybe weaker ice attacks will also be able to take advantage of weakness. Or if they're just weak to lightning, you could still do this to further their weakness to lightning. So really, really cool. Awesome ability. And it's a grapple, so it'll break, you know, people's guards and stuff. And then other than that, I mean, I like Battery Storm, but there's other abilities like it. I think Oil and Toil is nuts. Now, I think this ability has a typo. It says enemy area, but it's always targeted a single enemy for me. I've one time used it where I hit an enemy and 2 got the resistance to fire debuff, but it doesn't seem to be really an enemy area. It seems to be a single target, and sometimes the secondary effect can hit adjacent enemies. At least that's what it's felt like to me. Heavy damage, it doesn't matter if they're resistant to any elements, right? Because no one's resistant to just magic. This is like a unresistible element basically, right? And then you're lowering the resistance to fire. So this is great damage with a debuff, and I actually don't think this has a chance. I think this always lowers their resistance to fire. I think Scrub Down also does it too. It doesn't say it has a chance, and I don't think I've ever seen it miss, where you just lower their resistance to electricity, you lower their resistance to fire, making other characters deal damage. So these abilities are badass. I mean, there's a lot of average abilities too, but I mean, even Foozy Doozy, Battery Shock, Battery Storm are all really good too. But yeah, Oil and Toil, that's like my #1 ability on the Cabbie for sure. For the Chitose exclusive Eris, actually my favorite ability here is this one that I can't say at all, but it's pretty cool. I mean, I haven't used it, but I can read. Chitose serves up Blood Orange Martinis, which recovers her and nearby allies' HP and removes any debuffs. Now, there's just better versions of this ability. I think most of these abilities are not very good on her, but I mean, this is pretty good, and you don't need to, if you're not a Geomancer, you could bring this onto any job very easily. So I think this is a pretty good ability to have, especially if you're just like a Kunoichi and you want to use a different ultimate ability. Like, this is just nice to have. Other than that, even though I say I normally don't like debuffs, I do really like this agility debuff. The Kunoichi, I think, has a knife that does it, but eventually the knife just kind of, the damage falls off and you don't want to be using this. So maybe you could just be using this, right? Basically reduces the agility of enemies. I think that you might, as enemies get stronger and they start out speeding you, it definitely could be more and more important to lower their agility. I'm not super impressed with any of this job in general, though. It just seems like an average job with a lot of kind of normal abilities, none of which stand out to me as being awesome. But I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's like pretty cool, but you know, it's more just whatever. For the assassin class, I would say second place goes to the Sadistic Heal, in my opinion. I mean, being able to paralyze enemies, I think, is good. But I kind of like just lowering their agility. I think this is probably going to be easier to land. I mean, this is a bigger payoff, but I feel like enemies are just more likely to resist this. The agility debuffs are usually pretty easy to land. However, I think the best ability by far is the Essence of Wicked Web, which might be an ability it's not used that much, honestly. But this ability is so unique for the express opinion. One, what does it do? It inflicts magic damage to enemies in her way, likely paralyzing any who survive. Why is this ability so good? One, AoE damage, paralysis is all good. But also, this is the only lightning magic that the female characters can get. There's none of their other spells have lightning. None of them, right? There's typeless, there's water, there's fire. I mean, there's lightning physical, but this is the only lightning magical ability. And so this makes her potentially one of the best pure magic casters in the entire game. Definitely better than Psycho, but Psycho I like because she has that, you know, her ultimate basically lets her heal everyone to full, which is nice to be able to do that for free. But I think I'm gonna switch to Sonahi in my future playthroughs because I really want this ability. I think this ability seems awesome. It is kind of expensive, but I don't really care about that. It would be nice to have some electricity on my female characters as well. For the barmaid, I'm sorry to do Psycho dirty. I really don't like almost any of these abilities that much. I would say the best ability is probably the Essence of Remotivation. It's the exact same ability that the Idol has, at least the wording of it is identical. Like, revives the fallen ally to maximum HP with limitless positivity. Revives a fallen ally to maximum HP with limitless positivity. So it's like, but I mean, it's like a good ability to have. I like it. It's 30, and how much is this one? Is this one also 30? It's also 30. So I mean, I don't know why it's the exact same. But that ability is probably the best. And then the second ability that I like is, I'm sorry, but it's probably Boundless Cheer. Just an AoE attack boost. It's not the best one in there. Kasuga has it as well, but I mean, you know, you kind of, when there's slim pickings, you got to still pick something. Gangster here is actually going to have 2 and an honorable mention. So the honorable mention that I'm just not sure how good it is because I haven't really been able to experiment with it all the way is Blinding Viper. It's just a medium single target, but which is interesting about this ability is it doesn't blind the enemy like so many other abilities will do. They'll try to inflict blind. This one just reduces their accuracy, and that sounds kind of unique. I don't remember reading that ability on most of these jobs. This might be like the only ability that does that. If I'm forgetting something, let me know. But this does seem pretty unique, and I think that could be very, very powerful because I'm sure it's easier to reduce their accuracy than it is to blind them. But as far as the ones that are actually good, I think Dragon's Ascension is fantastic. Single target, heavy, you're boosting your own attack. You just kind of keep doing this every round. As long as they don't have a blunt resistance, I mean, this is likely your highest damage ability. That once you get 3 full charges, then you're going to switch to a different class's extreme attack. You know, maybe you do some samurai, some action hero, things like that to actually do extreme. But then this is just gonna, you could use this easily while boosting your own attack to the max. But the best one I think is the home cooked dim sum. You could use this really, really early in the fight. Gives everyone HP recovery over time, which is better when everyone's at full HP. And then they gain resistance to status ailments. This is just 2 really, really good things in one. Typically, I wouldn't spend a turn to heal before I need it, and I wouldn't spend a turn to resist status ailments before I need it. But when you're combining both of them in one action, where you're kind of just giving a panacea or whatever to your whole party, if an enemy tries to do AoE, you know, stun, you have a higher chance to resist it. If an enemy tries to do AoE kill you all, you already have healing lined up. So I think this is a really, really good ability. And I'll definitely be using Zhao on my legendary difficulty playthrough. For Jungi, or the Hitman, I actually think Essence of Trick Shots is very, very good. It's a cool AoE attack that is heavy to extreme, but the less targets there are, it actually gets stronger. So this is like I don't know if there's another ability that hits big AoE, but as you have less targets, it actually becomes more powerful. It does a little bit more damage, and it gives you a higher crit chance. So it's actually better against a single target than it is against like 7, which is a very, very cool ability, and just a high crit chance with extreme damage. I mean, you're just looking for a good way to deal damage at that point. Also, but maybe their best ability, it's kind of hard to say apples to apples which one does more damage. But Professional Slash, if you can get this to line up, it's a little bit hard to set up, but once you can, this ability seems sick. Mutilates an enemy with his blade. It's a medium damage, which seems bad, but it also has a chance of causing fear. I mean, that's kind of nice, you know, whatever. They could skip a turn. But if you attack them in the back, you guarantee that this is a critical, and you hit a second time. So that basically like quadruples the damage, right? Because instead of a medium hit, you're going to do a critical hit twice. So I think Professional Slash seems kind of sick, but you got to line it up. You would never use this if you can't get a back attack, you know? But still, very cool abilities in general. I really like the Hitman. All right, I think with that, we're done with all the base character ones, that we can go to the generic ones that everyone can have. So for the host has a lot of pretty good abilities, honestly, but I think people, I don't want to say people in general. Rose Stinger, Essence of Rose Typhoon, they're kind of the same ability. One is single target, one is AoE, but it's basically the same kind of damage, but it will charm and burn. So if you have a lot of enemies, you do the Rose Typhoon. You got a single enemy, you do the Rose Stinger. Just kind of a badass ability. Good damage, a chance to charm, and a chance to burn. I actually really like this if you have a Desperado on your team, because then they have a higher crit chance and stuff if you could land both of these things. Just good ability in general, honestly. Very, very powerful. The other one, though, that I think is actually probably the best is the Wonder Cocktail. This is one that if you're going to be a magic caster, you're going to want on anybody. It doubles the damage of your next magic skill and gets you a bit drunk. The drunk thing, I think, is probably a little bit of a negative. I don't know if there's some synergy with like the action star and the drunk thing, but I think it's mostly a slight downside or mostly just flavor. But why is this good? Bare minimum, it's a SP or MP saver, right? You could use Rose Stinger twice for 60 MP, or you could use Rose Stinger Wonder Cocktail for the same damage with 10 less MP, and it scales up, right? You could use Essence of Rose Typhoon twice, or you could use Essence of Rose Typhoon in a Wonder Cocktail, you know, reverse order, for less than half, right, of what it would cost. So that's very good. But besides that, it also gives your character time to, like, if it's the first round of combat, you don't necessarily need to deal damage. You could use Wonder Cocktail, which is a way to push your damage to the next level or to the next turn. And then you have someone like boost your magic, lower their fire resistance, you know, or something like that if you have people that could do that. So then you do more than double damage, basically, than if you would have done 2 Rose Typhoons. So it's just an insanely good ability. Host is definitely a very needed class. It's really the only pure magic dealer in the game. All these other ones are pretty much physical. As for the breaker, I think Essence of Breakdance Delight is probably the best one here. It does heavy AoE damage, and it says it just might recover your party's HP to the Mizax. Basically, being able to deal damage and heal is kind of cool. That way you don't have to take a turn off just for healing. You can keep progressing, you know, towards winning the fight. So I think it's a pretty good ability. And then all their other abilities are pretty similar. Like, I don't think Spin Sweeper is as good as the Gangster ability, which is single target and heavy. But, oh, you know what? I'm sorry. Obvious next choice is Excel Step. Excel Step is actually, like, pretty nuts. It just gives you your evasion up to, like, level 3 immediately. So this is so good for survivability. Now, it only does you. I still prefer having a more synergistic team instead of being kind of more of a selfish ability like this. You know, this is only a way to help keep yourself alive. But it is no doubt a good ability, especially if you find a good turn to use it. And if you're a breaker and you can make this last longer, then you can kind of just be set up for like a long time, like 5 turns at least or something, right? For the Chef, I actually do think their 2 best abilities are their ultimates here, but they each have a pretty similar lower one. So if you can't bring both of these, you can instead bring Vanquishing Pan and Cutlery Crash. They're basically the same ability, but instead of extreme damage, they're heavy, and they're 15 MP cheaper to compensate. But basically, this is heavy damage, chance to bleed. I feel like the Chef has good abilities that are better on other characters, but the Chef itself doesn't feel that good to me. But like, Cutlery Crash is good if you have a Samurai on the team. It's also good if you have a Desperado on the team. And Vanquishing Pan is really good if you are a Desperado and you bring this move over. But basically, it is extra damage to enemies the more status ailments they have. And that's pretty good, because that's exactly what the Desperado is trying to do. And that's exactly what the ultimate does too. So I'd probably take Essence of Searing over the Desperado to make that your ultimate kill something, see how much damage you can get ability. So that's pretty badass. But yeah, those are the 2 for the Chef. I think the Samurai is a perfect example of, like, the ultimate abilities are not always the best on the character. I mean, these are fine. They're good. But I'm telling you, Burning Arrow, this ability is so good. It does so much damage, man. It does heavy damage, and then it does more damage if you get the action prompt, which of course all abilities do more damage if you get the action prompt, but this one does even more. And it's AoE, it's fire, it just does a fuck ton of damage. Dreaming Arrow is pretty similar. Dreaming Arrow just doesn't do fire, and it's not AoE, but I think their damages are almost identical. So very great ability. Other than that, the 2 that I like the most, I mean, there is this whole Shadow Dance, you know, make them bleed. And Shadow Dance is a great damaging ability, there's no doubt, if they're bleeding. But I actually don't think it's as generically good as something like Raining Arrow. I think their bow attacks are really good in the Samurai. Now, Raining Arrow is a weird ability. This is like, if you're fighting one enemy, Burning Arrow is likely not as good as Raining Arrow, because this hits 3 times, 3 or 4. But this will hit the same target all 3 times if there's only one. If you have a lot of enemies, this kind of sucks, but if it's one target, it'll hit them multiple times, and it could lower their attack, which is good. Well, it doesn't really sacrifice on damage at all. I just like Raining Arrow. I think it's a really good ability. I haven't seen anyone really mention it as, like, I've seen a lot of people mention Burning Arrow, but almost no one mentioning Raining Arrow. But this could do a lot of damage if you have a single target. Absolutely. So Action Star, pretty much exactly the same as the host in this situation, where the Relentless Dragon's Dance is probably just the best skill on the character. Doubles the damage of your next physical skill on the following turn. Now, ironically, if this one made you drunk, it would actually be better, because you would also be able to do it on the Drunken Fist, which, you know, you do more and more damage the harder you hit, harder the more drunk you are. But even then, it's just insane, right? Like, in worst case scenario, it saves you MP. You use it every other turn, and it saves you MP, or you use it, and it still gives you a chance to deal more damage by getting more buffs. Maybe you have someone has a chance to use an item on you, yada, 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 blah, blah. Fantastic ability. It's better than using Essence of Improvision twice in a row, all right? Although this does recover HP. This ability is good, too. But actually, I think the second best ability here is pretty unexciting, but it is Tiger Palm Strike. It's just a really powerful ability. Now, it has the downside where if you miss an action prompt, it just stops. So instead of doing 3 hits, you could do just 1 hit. But if you do all 3 hits, I mean, this ability just like baseline without any buffs or without trying, without like back attacks, it just feels like it was doing more damage than pretty much everything else in the game. Some of that might be related to the fact that it's just on the Action Star. But I mean, getting 3 hits with this, just like it just obliterates stuff. It's a very, very strong ability. But don't let that shy away from getting like Essence of Improvision sometimes, because it does great damage and it does heal you, which is pretty cool. It's just not number 1. Aquanaut, probably like notoriously my least favorite class in the game, or least favorite job in the game. I actually think Essence of Dolphin Dive is really good. Extreme damage. It is physical, which isn't bad. I just tend to err towards more the magic side myself. That's kind of what I like in this game. I find it easier to exploit weaknesses usually, because very few things, like, there's a lot more enemies resistant to fists than there are resistant to all 3 magic types. It doesn't matter. Point is, extreme damage. The cool part about this is that it might end up weakening the ice. I think this is the only way to weaken the ice, right? Because Oil and Toil reduces fire, the Scrub Down reduces electricity, and this reduces ice. So I do think if you get this on the cabbie, you know, you get this on your Tommy, I think then he could reduce all 3 weaknesses. But it is a physical damage, which is kind of lame if you're going for a full magic team, but still, even worst case scenario, right? You're just lowering their ice resistance, and then you could abuse that with some other kind of ice ability, you know? So even if it's just a kind of a support character, I think this ability is pretty good, and I definitely think it's worth having. And then I think Jellyfish Juice is not bad. I think I kind of overlooked this ability because I don't like the Aquanaut, but an AoE, medium power, lightning damage with a chance to paralyze. I mean, this is just the Cabbie's ability with more upside, right? Because the Cabbie's Eric Tamazawa, it's this area medium, inflicts magic damage, but this one doesn't have a chance to paralyze. So unless the damage is like not written here and it's just a pure upgrade on this, or it's like, unless the damages are like worse on this, even though it doesn't imply that it is, this would just be a strict upgrade. So definitely something I would consider using. And also just a pretty good ability, honestly, even though I didn't love most of the abilities in the class. So here's the thing about the Desperado. I don't inherently think that the Desperado is actually that good with its skills. I think what makes the Desperado good in my mind is its weapons and stuff. But it's not to say their abilities are bad. I mean, I like Essence of Raging Bull. The caveat is you gotta silence the enemy. It's an enemy area and you gotta silence them. But silencing is not a bad thing to do, right? Enemies that are just attacking are way easier to deal with, especially deal with their damage output. And then if they are silenced, you're going to be doing more damage, and you're going to be getting crits probably. So this is just pretty good in general. Other than that, I mean, I don't have a whole lot of abilities I like. I do think maybe Bourbon Buster could be good if you're going with the, like, the thing is, no, I'm sorry. I got to change my mind in the middle there. I was thinking about it, and then I just talked myself out of it. I'm like, yeah, because you could use this with the Action Star and get drunk. The Drunken Fist drunk ability already gets you drunker. So I don't think that this actually has a purpose. So I'm changing my mind. We're going to go with the AoE Heavy Silence. It is kind of interesting that all the abilities that I think are the best on them are actually going to be punch abilities, not gun abilities. But still, I do think that these, I think this ability is pretty good. It's a grapple, it's AoE, heavy damage, and can silence. Like, it just got a lot going on that makes it pretty decent. It's also expensive. It's 52, which is a weird amount, but it's probably expensive because it's pretty good. Pyro Dancer. This is one of my favorite jobs, even though I think it kind of fell off, like, in my opinion, the later into the game I got, the less I kind of liked its overall identity. But some of the abilities I really do like. I mean, there's basically 3 I really like. I like Warcry. Warcry, I think, is maybe not insane, but I do think it's pretty good. It just basically gives you an instant full boost of attack. The thing is, I like having characters that AoE and do it for the whole squad and have everyone use similar damage types. So this isn't like a waste of a turn. It's still good, but I kind of like doing damage and having a chance to get attack up, or having a different character boost attack rather than spending a whole turn to do this. The survivability one on the Breaker, I think, is a little bit better, because if you're using it, it means you're afraid of dying, which means you're going to lose the game if you don't use it. This will just make fights go a little bit faster. Because of the way you can't, like, I don't know. I think this is not amazing, but I do think it's good. What I do think is good, though, is great, actually, is Soul Predation, if that's how you say that. Damage, AoE, medium power is not great, but it does an AoE damage, heals you, and it applies your weapon tributes. So there are those abilities that you could deal damage and heal you. But this deals damage, heals you, and does your weapon attribute. So that means if you have some pretty cool weapons with potential debuffs, or certain elements, you know, like enemies weak to fire, you then have a fire whatever weapon, fill in the blank here. I think that applying your weapons attributes means that this could be a really good ability. 1, for AoE clearing, 2, just for self-sustain. But my favorite ability, and I don't know if it's the best, come on, you already know what I'm going to say, the Mask of Punishment. I fucking love this ability. I think it's kind of hard to use, but I do think, again, you cast it, and then for the next several turns, it's at least 3, maybe 4, I can't remember right now. It'll basically cast a light attack on a random enemy. If you go up against one boss, and you have 2 characters use this, and then you have everyone's magic boosted, I just think if you do this once every 3 or 4 turns, that is going to be the most amount of damage you could do over those turns. Like, for one action, I think it'll do more damage than any other individual skill would. It's delayed, you know? I think it's a super powerful ability. I'll admit, it doesn't feel good to use most of the time, because most fights are really short against a lot of enemies, and it's not good there. But when you're fighting a guy with a lot of HP, this also lets you deal damage while supporting. Also, you could cast this like on a character that's normally a healer, and that when their turn comes up, they're going to be dealing some damage, and they could take that turn off to heal or buff too. So I think it's a really good flexible ability. Obviously, it feels kind of bad to use a skill and have nothing happen immediately, though. For the lady classes, we have got the Idol. Overall, the Idol is great, but they have probably the best. I think Miraculous Voice is kind of insane, but it sucks because it's just kind of overshowered in my mind by a different ability we'll go over later. But the Miraculous Voice is just removes all status ailments from all allies, right? I mean, pretty insane. And then the reviving something to full is pretty good, but I don't know, man. I just think that it's only 30 MP, and you can just get like half healing as well. I actually think that they just have like this Magical Concert has got a huge AoE. This pretty much always hits your whole team, and it pretty much always tops everyone off. I've never had it not top everyone off in the late game yet. So I think Magical Concert and Miraculous Voice, I kind of bring these over to all the ladies that I'm usually using. It just seems really powerful in general. They're the best pretty much support abilities, kind of. Now, I won't lie, the Night Queen I think is one of the weaker classes or jobs in the game, but I do think Vital Vibration is good. The issue is it's just like in my opinion, a slightly worse version of an ability we're about to go over. But it's okay. Like, it's still a really good ability, right? It does heavy, it does grapple, and it can lower their defense. I really, really like that. It's a great ability, especially if you're going with a physical build. I really think you'll be happy to have this on your team on at least one lady, because lowering defense is good. It has a grapple, and it's still doing heavy damage. Other than that, I don't like that much here. I'm not a hater of Charmed, but I feel like most of the really, really hard fights, Charm just doesn't work. They're just like immune to it or something, and so it doesn't feel that good. But I do think for most fights in the game, Spinning Queen will still be really good. If you hit like 5 enemies, you charm 1 or 2, that's a huge amount of damage your team is suddenly not taking if you're not able to just clear the fight right away. So I do think that's pretty good. So those 2 abilities I would say are probably better than most of the others. Kunoichi. What? Talk about a badass class. These last 2 classes jobs are so fucking good, man. The best attack here, I think, is likely going. Man, I really like this. I like all their abilities a lot, honestly. I really think Shadow Clone Jutsu is kind of fucking nuts, though. This ability, from what I could be told, if there's one target and you have all the correct buffs on, like, you kind of got to get a fairy tale situation going. But once you got it, this ability can do, like, someone told me they did 12,000 damage with this ability. And honestly, this ability has easily done more damage than all my other ones, right? Like, this ability is so strong because it gets stronger when you attack buff. It gets stronger when you defense debuff. It gets stronger when you agility buff. It gets like, there's so many ways to get the buffs and stuff. Also, if you have it applies your weapon tributes, so it can get stronger when you fire debuff, if you have a fire weapon, something like that. So it can get stronger in so many ways, and if you stack all these, it just does insane damage. I think it's probably the highest damage single ability in the game, at least for the ladies. But I think that it does require a little bit of like insane setup, and you're not going to use this every turn by any stretch. But I do think if you're kind of building this tower of blocks, this is kind of like, this is when you could knock it all over and knock them out. But I think probably the best ability in the game, Substitution Jutsu. This ability's busted in every game that it's ever in my opinion, and this game is no different, and it's even more powerful in this game than it is in other games. So you don't yield your turn to an ally. You switch positions with your ally's turn. So this basically lets you get like extra turns over the course of a game. It lets this character, whoever has this ability, you're like, okay, I have my Kunoichi up. Oh no, my whole party's almost dead. Okay, well, I need to switch to, I need to switch to my healer and revive people. Maybe this is your healer and you don't need to. Let's say you have like a samurai that's like really, really strong, but their agility is like 20. Adachi. And now suddenly this character has 200 agility. Your Adachi has 200 agility effectively. He gets twice as many turns. Or, every time this character comes up, Adachi gets to go. She takes Adachi's spot, but she goes really fast, so she catches up really fast. And then her turn comes up again. Boom, it's Adachi's turn again instead. So now you can suddenly have your really slow, really powerful characters take tons of turns to dish out tons of damage. It's the most flexible ability. You can use it for anything and everything. It makes any character have a turn whenever you want, and it's even slightly better than that because it doesn't set your turn timer to 0. You go to wherever your other character's turn timer was. So this ability should probably be on pretty much every single female you ever put in your party. And now, another one of my favorite jobs in the game, something I'm so freaking biased for that I love, and that is the Geodancer. This class, as this job, I'm gonna keep doing it, man. This job has so many good abilities, so many. So my favorite, maybe not my favorite, but probably the best ability on this whole job is the Essence of Natural Healing. I mean, talk about a powerhouse of a support ability. Recovers all your allies' HP. That's all your allies. That there's no AoE. It doesn't matter what kind of weird arena, where they're standing, you're just gonna heal them all. And it removes all their status ailments. The only reason this isn't like the single best ability in the entire game always is sometimes this character will get CC'd and then you can't actually use it. So you want to have a little bit of redundancy in there, but legit, it's badass. Very, very good. Love this ability. It just kind of saves your ass all the time. Anytime there's like, oh no, 2 of my characters got charmed. One got charmed, one got raged, one got poisoned, another's burned, another one is poisoned, burned, and raged, you know, whatever combination. This ability goes like, oh no, don't worry about it. Don't worry. It's all clear. In fact, why not be at full HP? Why not be at full HP? Enjoy. The second ability that I love here, I wish I could pick this one because I love it, but it's actually the Kumu Hula Corkscrew. Now, this is basically the exact same ability, but for willpower as the Night Queen's ability here, the Vital Vibration. Heavy, 1 enemy, lowers defense and a grapple. This is heavy, 1 enemy, lowers willpower and is a grapple. The reason why this ability is just better, in my opinion, unless you strictly want to lower defense and not willpower. I typically like lowering willpower. You already know that. But even beyond that, everything else equal. This ability actually knocks enemies back really far. It doesn't say it's a knockback, but it's like an unsung power of this ability. It doesn't knock back into allies or enemies, but they always get thrown into a wall. You could use it to actually reposition enemies. You could use this to knock enemies into other enemies. So it's not like an insanely huge buff, but it is a buff that makes it just a little bit better than that other really good ability, making this one of the best abilities in the game. It does so many good things. Good damage, lowers their willpower for your other team members. It even is a grapple, which could sometimes be a downside, but it's nearly always an upside. And it even does secret knockback. That means it does more damage. You could use it as a pseudo AoE ability, and it's fucking badass to look at too. One of my favorite abilities by far. And with that, that is going to be all of the jobs. Again, of course, I already mentioned it a little bit in the beginning, but I've not used the linebacker. I've not used the tennis ace. I still don't really want to, and I still don't plan to. So I apologize. Not trying to say I'm better than you. Not trying to say you shouldn't. I just know I wouldn't have bought it, and I want this to be more applicable to everybody. I don't know. It's just a weird personal thing, all right? Maybe I'm just inconsistent logically, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But I don't really care. I don't want to use those jobs. But that's it. Anyway, much love. Purplatypus is Purplatypus. Hope you enjoyed the video. And yeah, let me know what you guys think, where you agree, where you disagree. Get in the comments, and I will get very defensive and start accusing you. No, I'm kidding. But I am interested. There are people that are better than me at this game, that are more experienced than me in this game. I'm playing as much as I can. You know, I got a full-time job, and I've been playing this game every single day. But I mean, I'm not saying you don't have jobs. I don't know you. I don't know you. Maybe you don't, though. Maybe you don't. Some of these people, man, they're like, oh, I've already beaten New Game Plus. I am level 100 on all my characters. All my jobs are max level. I've got 600 hours in the game. I'm like, what do you do? Give me your life. I need this free time. Anyway, I'll see you guys on the flip-flop. You have a wonderful rest of your night or day. Happy Super Bowl Sunday, everybody.